You ever see your whole life get bulldozed literally over a garden? Because that's what happened to me, and let me tell you, if you've never watched a stranger flatten your memories with a diesel-powered grin, well, you're luckier than I am. My name's Travis Murphy, and not too long ago I thought I'd finally made it left behind 15 years of government cubicles and weather reports and fluorescent lights for a chunk of wild land just outside Willowbrook Estates. 20 acres saved up penny by penny to build a place with my own hands. Cedar planks wrap around porch air you could actually breathe. No rules but the sky above and the creek out back. I guess I didn't realize, not at first, how fast peace can turn into a battleground. I still remember that Tuesday morning early spring sun just waking up me down on my knees in the dirt, pulling weeds out from between wildflowers. That little patch of earth, honestly, was the first thing that made me feel like I had roots again after all those years moving from one concrete box to another. I was brushing the dirt off my hands, feeling more alive than I had in a decade, when I heard that crunch of gravel on my driveway like someone dragging the city right up to my front porch. Out steps this woman, perfect as a catalog photo. High heels, bleach blonde hair, clipboard thick with papers. Her name was Maria Whitmore, president of the Willowbrook Estates HOA, and she had the kind of smile that says, "I'm about to ruin your day." She didn't waste any time. "Your house isn't up to code," she told me, flicking through her script. "We require brick or stucco, not wood." In this garden, she actually wrinkled her nose too natural, like I'd committed some kind of botanical crime. You know what I mean? She's looking at my wildflowers like they're some kind of threat to suburban civilization. I just stood there, dirt on my jeans, already knowing this wasn't a social call. Behind her, those rows of beige houses and laser-manicured lawns looked like the set of some dystopian movie about the death of nature. I tried to keep my cool. "Ma'am, I bought this land fair and square. The deed's clear this property was never part of your HOA. Been private since the 1800s. But she just shifted from fake friendly to full-on cop. We expanded boundaries last year. You have 30 days to bring your home into compliance or face escalating fines." She shoved a packet at me thick with violations and contractor lists, like she expected me to roll over. But something in her eyes gave her away, like she was already measuring my land for something bigger, something profitable. I asked her flat out, "What's your real interest in my 20 acres? For a split second, the mask dropped. She started talking about maintaining property values, but I could see she was thinking about dollar signs, not daisies. And just like that, the war started. Red stakes showed up around my flower beds, surveyors marking up what was supposed to be mine. Notices started piling up, excessive grass height, tree branches casting shadows, garden hose not coiled properly, $50 fines doubling every week. Inspectors poking around at all hours looking for structural issues. It was death by 1,000 paper cuts, and Maria always came off as the reasonable one, just maintaining community harmony. But the thing that cut deepest, watching my neighbors turn cold. There was this old lady, Elizabeth, who'd once brought me cookies. Now she wouldn't even meet my eyes, told me quietly she'd been advised not to get involved. The shame in her voice stung worse than any fine. That's when I realized Maria's real power. She could poison a community one neighbor at a time. Then came the twist, something no one, especially Maria, could have seen coming. I was digging around one of those surveyor's stakes when I hit metal, and there it was, a rusted valve with Water Control 1893 carved into the side. Turns out my land held the old control point for the entire area's water rights. Something so old and ironclad, it had survived every bureaucrat since the Wild West. I tested the valve just a quarter turn and watched as the creek behind my house slowed to a trickle, then stopped. I reversed it and the water came rushing back. In that moment I realized I held the fate of 500 sheep, Maria's husband's entire ranch, and a neighborhood's lawns in the palm of my hand. The next day, Tom Whitmore, Maria's own husband, stopped by. Strange thing, he said, the creek went dry for a bit yesterday. You notice anything? I played dumb, but he was worried 500 sheep get thirsty quick. But Maria was about to up the ante. I woke to the sound of heavy machinery outside my window. Bulldozers dumped trucks, her demolition crew armed with fake permits and emergency removal orders. They flattened my flower garden, razed my tool shed, hacked down my fruit trees. "This is illegal," I shouted. "You can't do this." But Maria just smiled, waving forged documents. "There's no room for what you call individuality," she told me, her voice dripping with contempt. I started recording everything, heard the bulldozers, the chainsaws, because I knew nobody would believe it otherwise. Later, I called the board members. Most had no idea about any emergency meeting. Two were furious to learn Maria had faked their signatures. But the damage was done. That evening, Tom showed up again, face hard, voice flat. "This is my wife's doing, isn't it?" I nodded, and he just shook his head, exhausted. That's when I stopped playing defense. I wrote up a letter, evidence and all, and delivered it to the board. One more violation, and I'd invoke my 1893 water rights. I posted a sign at my property line, "Historical Water System Rights Established 1893. Word spread fast. Neighbors started whispering, "If it's real, we're sitting on a water bomb." Even the most die-hard conformists started worrying about which side to pick. Maria, cornered, came to my property herself, crowbar in hand, and tore down my legal marker. I recorded her in the act, let her rant about unauthorized signage. "Would you like me to call the sheriff about you destroying legal property?" I asked. She hurled the crowbar, spat. "This isn't over," and sped off. The final battle came at the next HOA meeting, standing room only. Maria tried to paint me as some kind of extortionist. "He's threatening our community's water," she shouted. But I had the old maps, the videos, and that portable pump to show exactly how the water system worked. The room went silent as the pressure gauge dropped. Then Tom stood up, his voice shaking as he called her out. "You lied to us, Maria. This was never about standards. It was about your expansion plans, and you nearly destroyed my ranch to get your way." After that, her power evaporated. Some folks shouted about their own wells. Others wanted to know what she'd been hiding. Tom, her own husband, backed me in front of everyone. Maria's last trick was to bring the county inspector to my property trying to dig up violations, but when they admitted they had no warrant, I had them escorted out. That night I made my decision. I turned that old valve, shutting off the water for good. Next morning at the HOA meeting, I waited for the fallout. Tom called Maria in a panic. "The creek's dry, Maria. My sheep are dying," and everyone in the room heard it. I walked in, took a seat in the back, and said, "I think you all see what's happening now." The room went dead silent, all eyes on Maria as she crumbled in front of them. Finally, she cracked, "What do you want?" I stood up, calm as I had ever been. "I want my garden restored, your resignation as HOA president, a public apology and compensation. Do that and the water comes back on." Then Tom burst in, dropped to his knees in front of me, begging, "Please, Travis, don't let them die for what she did. I'll do whatever it takes." And that more than anything brought me back to myself. I turned the water back on, shook his hand, and watched Maria's reign end in real time. The board voted her out right there, unanimous. Tom stayed to help rebuild, and I became good friends, even laughed about how the best neighbors sometimes start as enemies. Maria left town, couldn't bear the looks from people who'd once called her leader. 6 months later, my garden was blooming. Tom's sheep grazed by the creek, and the new HOA rules actually made sense. We sat on my porch one morning, coffee in hand, watching the sun rise and laughing about it all. "Justice sometimes flows like water," Tom said, slow but unstoppable. "So now I'll ask you, would you have stood your ground? Would you fight for what's right, even if it meant facing down an entire system alone?" Drop a comment below, tell me where you're watching from, and let's hear your thoughts. Because sometimes the wildest stories aren't the ones on the news, they're the ones happening right next door.